This is English shorthand dictation number 137 and the dictation speed is 160 words per minute. Ready? Start. Mr. Chairman, sir, in this address of the President, our foreign policy has occupied the front place and we were fortunate enough in having a little schooling the other day by the lady member who sits there. We had it from the lady member who speaks with a little amount of authority on behalf of the government on foreign policy. In her own words, she thought that the foreign policy of India is understood at the schoolgirl level. If that is the case, I believe it will take her a few years to understand the elderly statesmen of this House in respect of this subject of foreign policy. Now I come to Home Affairs. While talking about Home Affairs, I wish to lay particular stress on a subject which I consider to be of fundamental importance. I do not think there can be two opinions on the point that the very structure of our society is based on religious sanctions and moral values. I feel that a wrong type of education with wrong notions about scientific advancement and a very wrong conception of the essentials of a secular state has created a big vacuum in the life of this country. Mr. Chairman, sir, by being secular, we are opposed to a theocratic rule. That is true, but we certainly are not opposed to religion. The history of mankind shows that our moral values are rooted deep in religion. If we blindly attack religion, we cannot but weaken the moral fiber of the country. I definitely feel that that is the malady from which the country is suffering. I definitely feel that this is why we are not making the headway, that progress which we should make. That is the reason why we hear of so many scandals and are yet so complacent about them. What is most essential, in my view, is that we should have secular and spiritual harmony in our lives. I think that was the great gift which ancient India gave to the world at large. That is definitely a contribution which India alone can make. Coming next to the amendment which I have tabled on education, it was not without some hesitation that I gave notice of and moved this amendment because there is a clear confession in the President's address itself about government's failure in the sphere of education. But still my feelings in this matter are so strong and I feel that it is of such vital importance to the country that it is necessary that this council expresses itself in this matter. Also I knew there were members who would even defend the indefensible and draw comparisons where no comparisons are possible. One of the members here in very emphatic language told the House that there had been a vast expansion in the field of education, that there were about 1 million students in colleges, that about a lakh of graduates passed out every year, and so on. I consider it to be a great national loss, a waste of human energy and national wealth. We are playing with the youth of this country by giving them absolutely purposeless education. I think it needs no argument to prove it. Sir, I cannot do better than ask the honorable members to read convocation addresses which have been delivered in this country during the year 1952 by the President, the Vice President, the ministers, and the eminent educationists of the country. They have all condemned the present system of education and have called for a complete remodeling of it. Yet, sir, we have a friend here who is all praise for the educational expansion that has taken place during the last 5 years. I think it will be considered that it is only through a revolutionary educational program that the country could be vitalized. This definitely was the first step which should have been taken, a step not only to change the methods but also the content of education. It is really unfortunate that we have taken no step in this direction till this day. Next to education, there is an important point to which I wish to refer, and I consider that to be very important. I refer to the higher judiciary in this country, the treatment which is being given to the higher judiciary. Adverse service conditions have already had their effects, but my change is of a much more serious nature. I refer to the appointment of a judge in a high court. I am not at all referring to an individual case. I have got the greatest respect for the individuals concerned. I am only condemning the most deplorable conduct of the government. Sir, here is a gentleman who is thick in politics with all party affiliations and all prejudices that those party affiliations entail. Here is a gentleman who moves a motion of no confidence against the government of a state. Here is a gentleman who condemns the government of a state in the strongest possible language. And sir, just before the commencement of the next session of the assembly in that state, the gentleman is appointed as a judge of the High Court. Next, I pass on to the 5-year plan. It is absolutely impossible to deal with this vast subject in the few minutes that I am sure you are so kindly going to allow me. I would refer only to one aspect of this. Let us have a look at the plan from cover to cover. You find nothing in the plan but absolute helplessness for the middle classes. There is absolutely nothing to improve the condition of such people living in towns and big cities. We all know, sir, that they are the hardest hit people in the country today. We ought to know, sir, that they have eaten away all their reserves. I know that there are a number of families who are living absolutely on the brink of starvation, and we know that there is absolutely nothing but helplessness during the coming 5 years for this very important section of the population. We cannot forget the fact that they still constitute the backbone of the country. Whether they revolt or break down, in either case it will spell disaster. I mention these points merely to point out the grim picture that we face. We have to take notice of this picture earnestly, and the President's address has rightly given priority to these things, and we should give more time and thought for our own internal problems. Mr. Chairman, sir, when I say that we should give more thought to our internal problems, it does not necessarily mean that we should ignore international affairs. It is true that we have been playing with success a great role in international affairs. That role is a peacemaking role, and we have played it now for 8 years with considerable success. Industrially and economically, perhaps our position in the world is not commensurate with the part we are playing in international affairs. It is our ideals that have succeeded in international affairs, not our internal strength, and President's address is a call to the nation to help build our internal strength. This really is the prime task facing us today. Therefore, I say, let us not dabble in international affairs and neglect the tasks that are facing us internally. Sir, it is a fashion in the country, perhaps I am a little guilty of it too, that we want to learn more about other countries and take more interest in international affairs than perhaps people in America and Europe take about other countries. People in America and Europe take more interest in their own national affairs, much more than international affairs. We do not do that. Therefore, we ought to start somewhere to take more interest in our own affairs. The President's address, I repeat, draws our attention to problems at home. Out of the 8 pages of the address, 5 pages deal with matters at home and only 2 pages with international affairs. I believe that this is perhaps the right proportion in which I would like to distribute my attention. Sir, some amendments moved to the motion of thanks complain about the neglect of some foreign matters. However, I am very happy that national affairs have taken a greater precedence over international affairs.